and welcome. Today's guest is a three-time serial entrepreneur, prominent keynote speaker, former Emmy Award-winning TV news anchor, mom, and best-selling author. Interviewed and quoted by major news outlets, including the New York Times, CNN, and others, she is an expert on unconscious bias, entrepreneurship, and utilizing business communication strategies that empower, affect meaningful change, and foster diversity and inclusion. She is actively and deeply immersed in mitigating unconscious bias using scientifically validated methodologies, exploring leading-edge technologies, and undertaking new business ventures. Her current business ventures include co-founding BiasSync, a science-based technology company designed to help organizations effectively assess and manage unconscious bias in the work environment. She is also the founder and CEO of Ruiz Strategies, a certified minority-owned and woman-owned consulting firm that develops and executes transformational communication strategies for Fortune 500 companies, government agencies, and major professional services organizations around the world. Her deep entrepreneurial experience has been foundational in her quest to educate, inspire, and empower business owners. Committed to helping people and changing lives, her online mentoring program, Possibility Architect, serves female entrepreneurs determined to scale their businesses over $1 million in annual revenue with corporate and government clients. A dedicated philanthropist, advisor, and advocate. Please welcome Michele Ruiz. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Ellie. It's so great to join you here.
And what an appropriate day for us to come together. Today, as we're filming, is International Women's Day, and I cannot think of a more appropriate, incredible, aligned guest to have than yourself.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
So let's talk about some practical tips, because you're not alone. You're not alone in people who are experiencing gender bias or bias based on their religion or their sexual orientation or their cultural background or their nationality. So let's talk about some ways that people can recognize, some ways that people can navigate, and also some ways that people can really find their voice and step into asking for what they need or reporting or that type of thing.
Yeah, so, I'm going to focus my comments mostly on interacting in daily life externally, not internally with family members or friends, but just externally based in our jobs and, businesses. The research is ample about both racial bias and gender bias as it pertains to, for example, women are, generally speaking, not given as many opportunities as men. Now, there are myriad of reasons for that. And some of them are well-intentioned, but unfortunately missing the mark. I'll give you an example. It is not uncommon to have both a male and a female employee who are being considered for a major client-facing project, right? Let's just say it's a large consulting company or whatever the case is. And the leader, the manager, or the executive making the decision about which of the two individuals to assign as the lead on this big major client, project. That person could be taken into account. Oh, she has children, she has a family, her kids are younger, they probably need her. Joe can just hop on a plane and go anytime. They think they're doing her a favor. So they send Joe and they assign him this, big client-facing project. So here's what happens. Down the road, when it comes time to evaluate her, let's just call her Mary, for her performance review, compensation, etc. On paper, she looks worse than he does, but it's because she wasn't given the opportunities. And that happens a lot. And unconscious biases are really about stereotyping. And again, when we talk about unconscious biases, this is not intentional behavior. This is our brain making snap decisions, snap judgments, often based on stereotyping, and not almost always not fully cognizant of the impact on either a particular individual or groups of individuals. So, that's an example of where women should feel like they can either be very directive in their requests, as in they're maybe in the performance review, or they've just been hired and they'd like to say, hey, I really wanted just to make sure that, we are really focused on inclusivity and equity. And I want to make sure that as, these key opportunities or projects come up, that I'm evaluated, and considered for them. In other words, we put the request out there. We let the people who are making the decision know that we really want them. That would be, as an example, a suggestion. There are, what's known as microaggressions, micro-invalidations, micro-insults that happen. Microaggressions are things such as, what would you know about that? You're Latina, and in other words, like making assumptions, and that would be a microaggression. These are these tiny little things that sting people. They're not these overt, obnoxious behaviors. Again, that's explicit behavior. They're these small little stings, but they add up. Microinvalidation would be something like, we're in a meeting and, let's just say there were, 8 people in the room. I was the only woman or one of the few women. And, the guys were speaking over me, which, by the way, happens a lot in terms of what we view about how people treat women and men in the workplace. Women are constantly spoken over by men. And so let's just say that happened. I was quiet during the meeting, but after the meeting, I went to my manager or supervisor and I said, hey, I just wanted to bring to your attention that I felt that during the meeting, every time I wanted to contribute, I was spoken over. And since you were leading the meeting, I wanted to bring it to your attention so that maybe we can figure out a way for that not to happen. And then microvalidation is, oh, Michele, you're just taking it too seriously. Mm-hmm. Or, oh, no one meant anything by that. In other words, invalidating my experience, right? So we can bring these kinds of situations, up. There's so many, Ellie. I could write a book. we can write a book, because I know you're into just about navigating life and all the different biases that come up. There's recency bias. There's all kinds of things that that can come up. But it's really about speaking up when we feel like we've experienced something that just doesn't feel right. By the way, more often than not, people don't mean it. It's either a lack of awareness, and so I often, not often that it happens to me often, but when I do notice it, I will assume that they didn't realize it. And so I will just say, oh, you probably didn't realize this, but this is how I experienced that meeting or that conversation or this situation, or, when you said that, like that. So, or maybe you didn't, maybe I just wanted you to know how it landed. So you kind of, you're not like, you did this or you did that, or, you're kind of just opening up the possibility that they didn't realize or didn't understand, but at the same time expressing, your observation and making a request when appropriate. So,
yeah, I think that's really powerful, because so many times if you're in a situation where repeatedly you aren't seen, or repeatedly you aren't heard, or you are repeatedly invalidated, to your point earlier, or you're repeatedly spoken over, or when you go to say something, you're dismissed. So for so many people who are experiencing this again and again and again, oftentimes they feel like, well, what's the point in speaking up? What's the point in bringing it to their attention? Because yet again, I'm going to be dismissed or unseen or unheard or invalidated. And so I think that's a really important point that you just brought up. And I think that's really powerful languaging that we are equipping the audience to be able to use. I mean, I think to your point of really assuming that they didn't realize and assuming that it is an unconscious bias. And so to be able to frame it that way is not threatening.
Right, right. Now, I say that with a caveat in that, again, the science and the research shows this. Women typically, we're relationship people, right? We value relationships statistically more so than men. Not that men don't value relationships, but we're very relationship driven. We ponder and think and stew over a dynamic that happened in a conversation or an engagement, where men can kind of like, woo, and then off they go. It doesn't even like register, right? So consequently, when we're engaging with individuals, we can often want to be too soft, too polite, because we are concerned about how we might be perceived. And there is legitimate basis for that, by the way. So I say to you, yes, I do recommend that you assume the positive, that they didn't mean it, or unless it was so overt or the behavior is so obnoxious. But there are times when a very, very direct, straightforward communication is important. And sometimes we, as women, we can become too concerned about people's perception of us, and then we are less direct, but we don't get to a resolution, right? So there are times when it does make sense to be more direct and very specific about what occurred and what you'd like to see or what you'd like to not see happen, in the future. So I just say that because that also sometimes comes into play.
Absolutely. So in those moments where it's important to be direct, those would be the instances where it's, well, in the meeting, I felt unseen, or, I don't appreciate being spoken over. We've discussed it previously, and I don't feel like we're having a resolution. The situation isn't changing. The behavior is continuing to happen. Are those the kind of examples that you're referencing?
Yeah, especially if you brought it up before, you would say, and my request is that next Tuesday at our weekly meeting, I ask that you be paying attention and aware. And if you see myself or another woman being interrupted, that you actually step in and say, oh, so-and-so, let's stop. Let's let her finish what she has to say. I'm really interested. I really want to hear what she has to say. Let's just stop. Let's not interrupt her. Yeah. So there are times where you need to be very specific and direct about your request. So yes, that would definitely be, a situation like that.
Yeah. And I think that's a muscle that as women takes some development for us. I mean, so often we don't ask for help. So often we don't speak up for really our needs, our wants, our expectations. And so I love that this is something that we can actually practice. It is a muscle that we can develop in all areas of our life as we as women really find our voice, stand in our power, and feel empowered to speak, to ask for what we want, to be clear in our communication, and to set boundaries.
For sure. And even on the personal side, direct communication. I felt this, or I feel this, and I need this goes a long way.
Absolutely. I mean, no one's a mind reader. Yeah. No one's a mind reader, right?
Right,
So
exactly.
being clear with what we need and want. So with all the different mentors you've had, what's the best advice you have received?
Okay. So I'll tell you, on the business side, as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, the best advice I've received is hire slow, fire fast. Because on the
Wow.
business side, a bad hire can cost the company a lot. So when you see signs that someone's a bad hire, you just fire fast. And sometimes we get so committed to a path, and therefore a path of the person, because we've invested so much, right? We recruited them, we've interviewed them, we hired them, we've trained them, and all this kind of stuff. And 3-4 months, maybe even sooner, 2 months into it, we're kind of seeing, this really isn't panning out the way we want it. But we think about everything we went through. Can we continue to work with the person? All that kind of stuff. And at the end of the day, or maybe it's a performance issue or a culture issue with that person. It ends up costing you as an employer, you as a CEO or a president of your company, a lot. So that's the greatest business advice I've received. On the personal side, the greatest advice I have received is, and this ties to resiliency, is sometimes when you're going through things, again, I'll use the example of losing my son. The science, the research shows that that's the greatest loss any person can experience, more so than loss of a parent or the loss of a partner or a spouse, because it's the loss of a future. No one expects to outlive your children. And I learned through the most traumatic experiences that there's always something there that can help you become more resilient, or there's something there that can make you a better individual. And so if you can look at it that way, not to dismiss or discount the traumatic experience or the terrible, situation, but there's often some good for you personally as a person, how you evolve, how you develop, how you see the world, that can actually contribute to your growth as a person. So I would say that looking at how these, difficult circumstances have made me more resilient, have more capacity, more empathy, those kinds of things. And staying focused on that.
Yeah, absolutely. Tony Robbins likes to frame that as training yourself to know and recognize that life happens for you.
Yeah,
and
right.
My friend Maya Camarota, she builds on that, and I love her take. She says life happens for you, through you.
Yeah.
And it is through these experiences that we have, the events and circumstances of our life, that when we can learn to find the good, to find the lesson.
Yes.
To focus on that, to focus on the growth and the opportunity. And, Lisa Nichols likes to say, sometimes the best gifts come wrapped in sandpaper.
That's a good, I'll have to remember that. I'll have to remember that. I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah.
I often say I never would wish the experience of losing a child on anyone. Yeah. However, having had that experience, I am such a more conscious, better individual as a person. So, so I appreciate that.
Yeah, I mean, to your point earlier, that was such a pivotal moment that allowed you to take stock, to take inventory, and to reprioritize your life. So in that moment, your entire life shifted, and it set you on this path the path of impact, the path of purpose, the path of really being present, of reprioritizing what's truly important to you. And now you've had all of these true moments where you're present and you're experiencing each and everything to the fullest.
I certainly try.
Yeah.
Much better at it today, yes, than I've ever been.
You know, as we've talked a lot about really how you pour into the world, how you serve, how you live this life of purpose and impact with BiasSync, with your consulting firm, with Possibility Architect, with all of the incredible people that you mentor and all of the lives that you change. What do you do to fill your cup so that you can go forth and serve at the level that you do?
You know, my secret weapon is sleep. That first and foremost. I used to be one of those individuals because I would, and still is, my life is very high throttle. I operate in two states, full throttle or catatonic. And catatonic because I've been at full throttle too long, and then boom, I hit the wall, and I got to like, take 2 or 2.5 days to kind of just re-energize. But sleep in the bigger context of self-care. I know, I used to be able to operate on 4 or 5 hours of sleep a night pretty consistently. Not the case anymore. Doesn't mean that I can't wake up if I've only had 4 or 5 hours, but what it means is I'm much more aware of how it impacts me, my cognitive abilities, my mood, my interactions with people. And so I really focus on sleep, and that just allows me to show up more intentionally and the way I want to show up in the world and be focused on all those things. And then the other piece is really, I continue down this mindfulness journey, and I do a lot of study in mindfulness and more work along those lines. So that's kind of what fills my cup.
I love that. Mindfulness and sleep.
100%. Yes.
Absolutely. So let's imagine, as we start to wind down, that it is the end of your life best lived. You're coming towards the end of your journey here on this earth, and you have left it all on the table. You have served at the highest level. You have been fully present. You have done all the things you came here to do. What do you want them to say about you when you're gone?
So there is a quote that I landed on some years ago, which I think sums up my perspective on that. And that is, when you were born, you were crying and people around you were smiling. Live your life so that when you die, you're smiling and people around you are crying. That's it.
Yes, 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 yes. Amazing. And so it is.
And so it is. Exactly.
And so it is. So how can people connect with you? How can they find out more about BiasSync? How can they find out more about Possibility Architect and the other programs and services that you offer?
Oh, thank you. So I'm very findable online, Michele Ruiz with 1 L. So I have my own website. I'm on, all the major social profiles. My company, BiasSync, BIAS, bias, and then sync, because we all need to be in sync around mitigating the impact of unconscious bias. My consulting company, Ruiz Strategies, and I think Possibility Architect is, by the way, we're launching the full program over these next couple of months. So at the moment, you can find some high level information on my personal website under my name, but soon we'll have a Possibility Architect website as well. So
amazing. So if somebody wants to be part of Possibility Architect, they still have time to reach out, go to your website, learn more about it.
Yeah, and they're all of those are ways, prompts to how to communicate with me and send me a message. And So
Amazing.
yeah, I think I have 8 sources of ways people are, between LinkedIn and Twitter and, all these other ways. There are myriad of ways that people can reach out to me. So.
And for everyone in the audience, do reach out. As you can see, Michele is exceptional. So reach out to her, learn more about Possibility Architect, learn more about navigating unconscious bias. It's so important, and it's something that we can all do our part to mitigate. Well, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for the work that you do in the world. Thank you for the way that you show up. Thank you for the lives that you change, not only for today, but for tomorrow. Thank you for your commitment to such critical work, and for how you pour your heart and soul into living every single day as a force for good.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.